I would like to start with an apology. Somehow, by the force of habit, I prepared the presentation in English, and now I realize that I was a bit detached from reality, but that's how it is. I also would like to thank Rami and Tali, and Rami for being such an energetic and diligent and also open-minded to all sorts of critiques and different ideas, things that's not always, I really appreciate it. And he knows why, because we had a lot of arguments and differences of opinions. Now I would like to start with the title, Is it important to teach social-emotional skills in schools, from teaching skills to social-emotional support? Now the term support is not coincidental. It implies that what we have to do is not only to teach skills, and this is maybe the most important point in the whole presentation. What we have to do is not only to teach skills, but to support and nurture, לתפח, nurture motivations and inclinations. And those are two very different things. And they're important, and I will show why. They're important because they have implications for how teachers and educators think about their task, what they have to do. And they're also important for priorities in teacher education and ministry education, allocation of resources and money. So for example, when we saw the baby, the 18-month-old baby, I didn't know I will see it, but it really fits right in. When we saw the 18-month-old baby that is helping in a Rankin well-known study, he didn't help because he was taught a skill. He had a motivation to help that was nurtured probably by a supportive environment, a natural one, and was even increased. And it was not spoiled by rewards or by other controlling intrusive parental behaviors. And that's a very important point. So I have nothing against skills, but they should come against the background, or based on a much more against the background of supporting motivations and inclinations and needs of students. And it's already appearing in what Kimberly has shown. So why not neglect or move away from the terms SEL and talk about social emotional support, which is first supporting student motivations, inclinations, needs, self-views, and then on top of it, and only if it exists, add a second level of teaching. Without this first level, teaching is not effective, or may not be sufficiently effective. Okay, let me move on. My collaborators, Noam, Yael, Karen, and Ohad, they're all educational psychologists and current and previous doctoral students. The main points. I would like to suggest that presently there is not enough evidence showing that direct systematic instruction of social-emotional skills to students by main teachers, מחנכים, מחנכות, is beneficial in the absence of more basic motivational supports from teachers. Number two, explain the concept of practices providing basic motivational supports and present a model integrating it with SE instruction. So SE instruction is maybe important, but only when integrated. And therefore the program shouldn't be called SEL, it should be called social emotional support. Suggest possible implications, and two questions for the audience. Two main components. Now, most SEL programs, which are really social emotional support programs, that are successful, have two components. One is direct SE instruction, systematic instruction of SE skills to students by main teachers, מחנכות, as part of a curriculum. Two, basic motivational support, teacher and school practices that nurture students' basic psychological needs, learning, pro-social motivation, positive self-views, etc. Now, let me just briefly explain what I mean by basic motivational supports, which should be the groundwork, the basis on which teaching, SE teaching should exist. Coming from self-determination theory, which incorporates actually a lot of other theories, I believe that those are practices supporting students' basic psychological needs for relatedness, competence, and autonomy. And autonomy means freedom from coercion, like you don't try to control the baby helping behaviors by giving rewards or by tempting it or by forcing it, and know what is important to me, which is I call inner compass. Now, let me just give you some examples why those things are so important. So relatedness, in order to support students' need for relatedness, safety and belongingness, the teacher has to know, listen, show interest, devote time, show caring for each student. Prevent use of exclusion and shaming as tools for maintaining social status. It takes a lot of skill to know how to do it. Encourage collaboration and so forth. Make room for each person. This actually requires a lot of training and supervision and support before even you start to teach SE skills. Competence, set optimal challenges. Let's go to number 3. Give timely, task-specific, non-comparative feedback. When the students fail, help them cope with failure by constructive interpretation, process focus, and relevant strategy learning, and other things. Those are things you have to learn and to train in and to get supervised. It takes a lot of time to do it. And those are basics, because without them, the student feels that he doesn't have an ally who help him to cope with difficulties or when he fails. You don't want to. And if this exists, that's okay, go end with SE teaching. Autonomy. Attempt to understand students' perspective when resisting, not only when agreeing, when disagreeing with you. It takes a lot of training to do that. Promote learning, respect for rules, and self-guiding values and intrinsic interest by providing rationale, modeling, fostering reflection, initiative, choice, not relying on conditional positive regard, on shame, on ego involving competitions and comparisons to others. It takes a lot of effort to master those practices and to be able to do them. That's why, and you understand what an immense task teachers actually face. Now, the consequences for those practices are autonomous motivation, positive perceptions of self and others, a firm sense of identity, and there are others. Okay, evidence for the benefits of practices providing basic motivation supports, like I said, for relatedness, autonomy, competence, motivation, positive self-views, pro-social motivation, comes from a lot of studies. I mean, it's really well ingrained. I mean, there's much more there than on SEL. It's much wider and comes from a larger literature. Now, what are the implications of this finding for SEL programs? It is clear that the second component of these programs, basic motivational supports, like I exemplified, without SE instructions, you don't need SE instructions to do it, all those things. It can help, but you don't need it, is very important. Given the clear evidence for the fundamental importance of basic motivational supports, it is now important to ask, do we have evidence that direct instruction of SE skills can be beneficial also when it is not accompanied by practices of basic motivational support? In my view, the answer is no. A bit blunt, but yes. Okay. Careful reading of meta-analysis and reviews. Now that's an important point. Careful reading of the meta-analysis and exemplary programs suggests or indicates that the unique effects of direct SE instruction are usually examined together with the effects of basic motivational supports, classic confounding. Therefore, it is not possible to separate the effects of direct SE instruction from the well-known effects of basic motivational supports not using direct instruction, which are much more common in the literature and there are many more programs. So, conclusion one, the bad news, because the effects are not examined separately, we do not presently know if direct instruction of SE skills has significant positive effects also when standing alone. That's very important. Now there is also important caveat. The research survey does not imply that it doesn't refer to the fostering of SE skills in teachers. I think it's important actually if you also support their needs. It gives them some basic motivational support. Conclusion two, the second, the good news. While SEL research does not allow us to conclude that direct SE instruction can be beneficial as a standalone effort, it is possible to interpret the findings as possibly suggesting that SE instruction may be beneficial when combined with practices providing basic motivational support. Therefore, I propose to substitute the term SEL with the term SESI, not sexy, just SESI, social emotional support and instruction. And the support comes much before the instruction. Now here's the example of the model, and I would not go through, well, let me go. So basically, this model has two components. One is the foundation, basic motivational supports that support, those are practices that support students' need for belongingness, relatedness, safety, competence, autonomy. I mentioned some of those practices, and therefore it also encourages autonomous motivation to help and learn, like the baby we saw, and the positive use of self and others. And this leads to all sorts of desired outcomes like well-being and so forth. Now, there is a second component, top, less critical, less foundational, SE instruction, primarily in contexts when SE skills are relevant to students and teacher concerns and goals, and only when students trust the teacher. That's a basic issue. Okay, let me go. And now there could be also a moderation here. When you have the foundation, SE instruction might be very useful because it actually also helps in basic motivational supports. Okay, possible implications for priorities of the Ministry of Education, Shefi, and teacher education. Under what conditions is direct SE instruction likely to be beneficial? Can it be counterproductive? Direct systematic instruction of SE skills by teachers, especially main teachers who are overloaded with a lot of other tasks, as part of a curriculum should only occur when teachers provide direct ongoing support for their students' basic needs, motivation, and self-views, and certainly do not frustrate these needs. SE instruction by a teacher frustrating or not supporting student needs may even boomerang and increase students' cynicism and alienation. And we have, I know of a number of examples from colleagues and students and so on. Invest more in training in practices providing basic motivational support and less in SE instruction. It's a question, but it's maybe also a statement, a suggestion at least. Practices providing basic motivational supports are often difficult to apply in sensitive and effective ways. In Israel, this difficulty increases because there is not enough training and support, heterogeneous classroom, discipline problems from children and parents, and pressures from parents and Ministry of Education. Later, given that many teachers need considerable training and support in the application of basic motivational supports, the Ministry of Education may consider providing more resources to training and support in the application of basic motivational practices than to SE instruction. I'm glad that you have questions. We can discuss it in length. So I'm sorry. I mean, I'm doing what I can. I cannot, and I have a time limit. Can you hear in the back? Okay. Reducing the life skills curriculum and integrating it with basic motivational supports. It may be desirable to reduce direct teaching and activities. I mean, that's like teaching in an Israeli classroom. It's okay. And there are some good points about it, that your students are active and would like to understand. Okay, no, that's okay. It may be desirable to reduce direct teaching and activities cultivating SE skills and devote more time to teacher and class routines and activities that directly support students' needs, motivations, and self-views. Ideally, life skills lessons will be conducted mainly as part of an effort to enhance teacher motivational support, and in this context, there could be a very fruitful integration between practices of basic motivational support and SE instruction. For example, if there is shaming in the class or less of respect for other students, you may want to really be very, to go against shaming and conduct class discussions in which you establish rules against shaming and maybe share feelings about how people feel when they are being hurt. This is not SE instruction. But then if you also teach listening and understanding of listening and conflict resolution and understanding of other emotions and so forth, it can be helpful, I'm sure. Certainly listening and conflict resolution. But only if you first of all take an action to disallow shaming and to be very clear in terms of your value orientation and do some initiatives, work with the students. So there is a possibility of integration. I think it's very important. Okay, last point, effects on teacher thinking. I think that's very important. Teacher thinking on their role in nourishing experiences and connections that promote student thriving. You see, the cartoon is not, the emphasis on basic motivation. The idea is that some people say, what does it matter? Use SEL or use social emotional support. Well, words create reality. If you use terms that are incorrect or very limited, it also affects your thinking and ways of reacting. And that's why it's important to me. The emphasis on basic motivational support is important because it fosters teachers' understanding that students' thriving depends not only on the skills they develop, but at least as much, and perhaps more, on experiencing support and satisfaction of basic needs, psychological needs, motivations, and positive self-views. Overemphasizing skills may also promote a technical approach in which teachers view the role as skill builders and neglect the role as gardeners, providing and nourishing, vitalizing experiences and connections that allow students to flourish. So just like if you want to promote helping in your class, like this little baby, first of all, give him support and maybe model, and don't control his behavior so much, and allow him to derive intrinsic satisfaction from that. And then maybe also help him to understand the emotions of other people. But a lot of empathy doesn't need, and helping doesn't need on our skills. If we have good experiences, we have a natural tendency to help and to learn, as long as it's supported. Okay, I think I'm just about time. Questions for further thinking. How can we increase the likelihood that teachers' ongoing behavior at school would not contradict the very SE skills and dispositions that the SEL programs they teach try to foster? איך עושים שלא תהיה סתירה בין מה שאתה מלמד ומה שאתה עושה בהתנהגות שלך, ואיך מיישמים את זה בתוכניות שנשמע כאן. Thank you very much.